Anyone who knew me could tell just how much I loved my family. I was lucky to be adored by two great parents who showed me what true love could be like. And as I grew older, I dreamt of having someone loving me just like how my dad loved my mum. They were everything a perfect couple should be. I won't lie. As a kid, I wasn't always the brightest, and I was kind of spoiled, but I never meant anything bad. I remember this one time when it was Valentine's Day. Everyone around me was getting roses and chocolates, and I didn't get a single thing. I was really sad about it, and I ended up crying to my parents. So when I woke up the next day, my dad had surprised me with chocolates and gifts. He told me that I should never ever be sad because he would always be there to love me, and that I'd always be his little girl. My dad always made me feel like the luckiest kid in the whole wide world. I remember when I was in high school, all of my friends got flowers from boys, but I didn't receive a single rose. I knew it was silly, but I was a little bit bummed out, and when I got home, my dad had gotten me flowers instead. I was extremely grateful for his love, but that moment made me realize that I wasn't a kid anymore, and I didn't need to get flowers from anyone to be happy. I was already lucky enough to have such loving parents, and that was more than enough for me. But, to be honest, if the world gave out an award for the biggest helicopter dad, I bet my dad would get it. My friends would always talk about my dad and his overprotectiveness, and while they thought of it as too much, I was just happy to have someone always be there for me. You see, in school, my dad would never miss a single competition of mine, and while other parents didn't have time for their kids, my dad would be there holding an umbrella for me for the entire 6 years at school. My family always wanted me to focus on studying rather than being obsessed with love. They made it their mission to tell me that I should just wait until after I graduated to find a boyfriend. And my mum, she would always say that the person I got with needed to love me as much as my dad did, and that I shouldn't settle for any less. To be honest with you, that only made me wonder, would I ever find a man like that? My mum spent the majority of my childhood working the night shifts, so she would spend most of her days sleeping. It was mainly just my dad and I, but he never minded. He would help me with my clothes and do my hair every day. I loved every minute I spent with him, so when I got accepted into a university in a different province, it came as a complete shock. At first, my dad insisted on me not leaving. He even tried to convince me to go to a university closer to our house, but I firmly turned his idea down. I wanted to try and live on my own for once, because I felt if I didn't do it now, when would I ever learn to do things by myself? And in the end, he gave in. One day, my mum called me freaking out. She said that my dad didn't come home last night and begged me to try and call him. I kept calling and calling, but it would go straight to voicemail. I was so worried, fearing an accident might have happened. It wasn't until a few hours later when my dad finally called me and apologized, saying that he ended up sleeping at a friend's house and his phone was out of battery. I was relieved that he was safe and happy that he was home. Although, after that day, everything changed. My dad turned into a completely different person. He rarely picked up my calls and started coming home really late. He would constantly make up terrible excuses, and when my grandmother got really sick, my dad refused to go with my mom to see her. He ended up disappearing for weeks. I wish it didn't get any worse, but it did. Everything broke into pieces when my dad raised his hands on my mom. I had never pictured that anything like this would happen in my own home with my family. and from my dad. He was my world, and I always thought that he could never do anything wrong. But the perfect picture of a cute old couple living together was completely ruined. My dad had been everything to my mum, and the betrayal had hurt her so deeply that for the first time in my life, I saw my mum break down. It was like my dad had become a complete stranger. He stopped caring about hiding his mistress from my mum, and instead started bringing her to our favorite places and even to family events. I couldn't help but hate him for what he was doing to my mum, and I was really afraid that she felt ashamed. But my mum told me that she didn't do anything wrong and that it was my dad who should have felt ashamed. It was in that moment that I realized the hard truth. That when a husband and a wife no longer love or care for each other, they treat each other like complete strangers, completely erasing their history together. I thought that I would always be his little princess and that he would always love my mum. But now, my mum and I were nothing. The only thing I could do was encourage my mum to feel better. I tried to do everything I could to help her through this tough time. Still, it hurt me too. How could the world be so mean that the person who's hurting your loved one was also the one you loved the most? I kept praying to my mum to get better, and I tried to remember what she would always tell me as a kid, that we would always have each other no matter what. It took a while for my mum to build up her strength again, because she spent a long time hoping that my dad would change his mind, that he would come back to her. But the longer she waited, the more my dad became worse. He would pretend like we didn't exist. So when she finally let him go, my mum decided to sue my dad for infidelity. It ended up leaving him penniless and completely alone. The damage my dad has done to my family has completely changed my view on love. I don't want to get married anymore, and I can't imagine having a relationship at all. So before this video ends, I want to say something to every man who's about to settle down or those who already have. When the time has passed and your partner has become old, you may fall out of love with the person you married or not find them attractive anymore. But if you're thinking about having an affair, not only will it break your marriage, but also hurt your children. Because in the end, they will be the ones who have to pick up the pieces after you leave, and they will be the ones who see the pain that you have caused. So please, do not do what my dad did and just leave us high and dry. Talk to your partner and talk to your kids. Figure out why you're unhappy and what you can do to get better.